The night my daughter stumbled through my apartment door, barefoot and trembling, I thought I was dreaming. But nightmares don't whisper truths that shatter the world you thought you knew. Her voice was small, cracked, and carried the weight of something no child should ever hold. "Mommy, should I tell the police about the other kids in Grandpa's basement?" The coffee mug slipped from my hands and exploded against the tiles, spilling brown liquid like blood across the floor. My legs wouldn't move. My breath wouldn't come. I just stared at her, my little girl, standing there in a torn nightgown I'd never seen before, her tiny feet leaving smears of red across the carpet. "Sienna, baby, what are you talking about? How did you get here?" She lifted the rainbow lanyard I'd given her months ago with the emergency key dangling from it. Her knuckles were white from clutching it so tightly. I walked from Grandpa Roland's house. The man with the truck forgot to lock the upstairs door. The world tilted. Hours earlier I had kissed her forehead, tucked her into bed in her unicorn pajamas, and gone to wash the dinner dishes. Now she was here, in clothes that weren't hers, telling me about trucks and basements. "What man?" "Baby, you were in your room sleeping." Her lip trembled. "No, Mommy. He came through my window. He said you sent him. But I knew you didn't. He grabbed me anyway." I pulled her into my arms, pressing her against me. She was ice cold. Her hair smelled like smoke and something chemical that turned my stomach. "We're calling the police," I said, reaching for my phone. "Wait, Mommy. First I need to tell you about Milo and Destiny and baby Theo. They're still there." Her eyes were too old for her face, heavy with a secret she shouldn't know. My heart cracked as I listened. "Milo is 6. He said his mom is probably looking for him. Destiny cries a lot. Theo is still a baby." The name hit me like a hammer. Roland. My father. The man I'd fought in court to keep away from my daughter. The man who swore he'd changed. The man who smiled at family gatherings as if the shadows in his past had disappeared. And now my daughter was telling me he was keeping children locked beneath his house. I dialed 911, my hands shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. When the operator answered, I spat out the words like poison. My daughter was kidnapped. She escaped. She says there are children in my father's basement. Send help. Now. The sirens came quickly, screaming through the night like wolves. I held Sienna tightly, whispering that she had done so well, that she was safe now. But I knew nothing was safe anymore. That night split our lives into 2 parts, before and after. Before, I was a single mother barely surviving, dragging myself through double shifts at Riverside Hospital, living paycheck to paycheck, and convincing myself that the worst thing I had to fear was failure. After, I became something else entirely. The police raided my father's house. They found the children. They found rooms I never knew existed. They found horrors I still can't bring myself to imagine fully. And they found him. My father. The man who had once lifted me on his shoulders, who had sat at my kitchen table pretending to be a grandfather. Evil had worn his face all along. But here is the part no one tells you, the part the police reports don't mention. Justice is slow. Courts are slower. Men like him find ways to twist stories, to manipulate sympathy, to paint themselves as victims. So I waited. I smiled for the reporters. I played the grieving daughter. But inside, I made a promise to the little girl who walked barefoot through the dark to bring me the truth. I promised her that Roland would never walk free again. And when the time was right, when the cameras were gone and the lawyers were looking the other way, I made sure that promise was kept. My father doesn't live in that basement anymore. He doesn't live anywhere. And every night when I tuck Sienna in, I remind her, she saved them. She saved herself. She saved me. But me? I saved us from him. The trial dragged on for months. Every day, I sat there in that cold courtroom, clutching my daughter's hand while my father stared at me with that same smug expression he'd worn my entire childhood. He thought he still had power. He thought he could charm the jury, manipulate the judge, twist the truth into something that suited him. He painted himself as a frail old man, a misunderstood grandfather, a victim of confused memories and bitter family disputes. And I watched the system bend toward him. The defense argued that Sienna was just a child with an active imagination. They tried to dismiss the other children's testimonies as confused, rehearsed, or coerced. They picked apart the timelines. They sowed doubt. Each day I walked out of that courthouse, I felt my fury growing like a fire that would not go out. I had trusted the law once before, after what happened years ago, and it had failed me then. Now I was watching it fail my daughter. One evening, after a particularly brutal day of testimony, I found Sienna sitting on the edge of her bed, hugging her unicorn stuffed animal. Her eyes were glassy, her voice small. "Mommy, what if they don't believe me?" I knelt in front of her, pressing my forehead against hers. "They will. And if they don't, I will make sure he never hurts anyone again." She looked at me then, searching my face. And I think she knew. Children always know more than we give them credit for. The verdict came weeks later, mistrial. Not enough evidence. Technical errors. My father smirked as if he had won. But what he didn't realize was that he had already lost. I began planning that night. Revenge doesn't come in one burst of fury. It's crafted, sharpened, deliberate. I knew his habits. I knew his favorite bar. I knew how he liked his whiskey and that he always drove home drunk, despite the conditions of his release. So I waited. I followed. I studied. The night I chose was raining, the streets slick with water and shadows. He stumbled out of the bar, keys jangling in his hand, humming some old tune from my childhood that made bile rise in my throat. I followed at a distance until he reached the stretch of road by the river, the one with no cameras, no witnesses, just the sound of water rushing below. I flashed my headlights once. He glanced in the mirror, recognition flickering in his eyes. By the time he realized it was me, it was too late. I forced his car off the road. Metal screamed, tires skidded, and then there was silence, except for the splash as his car plunged into the black water below. I sat there for a moment, engine idling, rain drumming on the windshield. I didn't cry. I didn't laugh. I just breathed, steady and calm, for the first time in months. When I returned home, Sienna was asleep in her bed, her stuffed unicorn cradled against her chest. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "It's over now." No one ever found his body. The river swallowed him whole, erasing every trace. The papers printed his photo, called him a fugitive, speculated that he had fled the country. Some said he'd escaped justice. But I knew the truth. Justice had already been delivered. And in the quiet of the night, as I tucked the emergency key back into Sienna's drawer, I realized something. Revenge hadn't made me a monster. It had made me free. For weeks after the river swallowed him, I lived in silence. Not the kind of silence that feels peaceful, but the kind that presses against your chest, makes you listen for footsteps that will never come, for voices that can't be silenced in your head. Every creak in the apartment, every siren echoing in the distance, made me tense. I half expected the police to show up at my door, to accuse me, to drag me away in handcuffs. But they never came. Instead, the world moved on. His face appeared on the news for a while, listed as missing, presumed fugitive. They speculated that he fled prosecution, maybe slipped into Canada. Some said they'd seen him in diners and truck stops. Others swore he was hiding in the woods. I knew better. The truth lay at the bottom of the river. Sienna began to heal. Her nightmares came less often, though she still clung to me at night. Sometimes I would find her sleepwalking, standing by the front door with her emergency key in her hand, as though she feared she might need it again. I would kneel beside her and whisper, "You'll never have to run again. He's gone." But here's what no one tells you. Revenge doesn't just free you, it changes you. I started noticing things. Men on the subway leering at young girls. A neighbor down the hall who shouted at his wife until she cried. A doctor at the hospital making comments to a nurse who couldn't afford to quit. Before, I would have looked away. I would have told myself it wasn't my business, that life was already too heavy to carry anyone else's battles. Now, I couldn't. Because I knew how monsters thrived under silence. Under the benefit of the doubt. Under the shield of reputation. I had grown up under one, after all. The first time it happened was almost by accident. A man from the hospital, one who always cornered the new nurses, brushing their arms, leaning too close. Followed a girl into the parking garage. I happened to be there, waiting by my car. She looked scared. He looked smug. I didn't think. I just stepped forward. My voice was calm, steady. She's leaving. You're not. He laughed, said something crude, and reached for me. That was his mistake. It didn't end like the river. I didn't kill him. But I made sure he would never put his hands on another girl again. And when the nurse drove away safely, she didn't even see my face. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. For the first time since Roland's car went under, I didn't feel haunted. I felt alive. Revenge, I realized, wasn't just about what had been taken from me, it was about what I could take back. Protecting Sienna had been the beginning. But now I understood something bigger. There are always other Milos, other destinies, other little Theos out there. Children who don't make it to the door. Women who don't have the strength to run. I couldn't save them all. But I could save some. And if the law wouldn't stop the monsters, then I would. My father's shadow no longer loomed over me. Instead, I had become something he never imagined, a woman who wasn't afraid anymore. The world thought Roland had escaped justice. They were wrong. He taught me what monsters look like. Now, I hunt them.